What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So, as you guys can see, I'm shooting this outside of my house, mostly because, as some of you know, I'm real sick right now, and I just didn't feel like setting up the lighting. So, whatever. But today's topic of discussion is a question I get usually like right before class. I get a bunch of emails and stuff, so I want to be able to link a video that I can just shoot as a response, because it isn't just as simple as, oh, wear this to class and then come out. And look, I know, already I can see myself inundated with troglodyte comments on, stuff to wear for classes and all this other shit. Here's the thing. This is a legitimate question that I get from a lot of different people, because, and it varies from class to class usually, right? So we're going to start with like a pistol class first. Generally speaking, and this is generally speaking, right? And this is for like the vast majority of folks. I tell people to show up to class just like this. Concealed carry gear, pair of jeans, regular pair of shoes, all of that stuff, right? Our classes talk about, bringing a minimum of 4 magazines, right? And that's because a lot of our curriculum is based around that 4 magazine type frame as far as bullets, and that's based off of like the Glock 19. So a 15 round magazine is like the standard for us. If you're a single stack guy, it's ×2, right? As far as magazines are concerned. Now here's the thing on that. Just bring a regular concealed carry stuff. And what I would say is, if you carry an extra magazine on your body, go ahead and do it. But as far as the other mags and stuff are concerned, just pocket them. The back pocket from your support side works great. Just don't throw other stuff in it. Mainly because it's just simpler and you don't have to worry about stuff coming out, all that jazz, right? Mostly because we understand wholeheartedly that as far as just number of bullets fired, we usually tailor a lot of what we're doing to around 30 bullets, right? That's 2 magazines. And if there's a drill that dictates going a little bit further than that, and there are a few, we tell you to bring the extra mags and all that stuff. So as far as that is concerned, the vast majority of us, show up in concealed carry gear and done, right? Now, where this gets a little bit more complex is, and we've had this happen before, like what if you're a police officer, or what if you're like an MP in the National Guard, all of that. Well, what I would say is pick a day that you have concealed carry gear on. I would say like the 1st. And then pick a day where, like if you're a cop, you throw on your bat belt with all your stuff on it, like all of your stuff on it. Cuffs, freaking mace, all that stuff. Put all that on. And for those of you that want to go further and like throw, uniform on and shit like that, I'm okay with that too. Mostly because that's your job, right? And especially if you're a police officer, if you're going to interact with guns and stuff like that, I would highly recommend understand that you'll be washing it. But yeah, I would be like, yeah, sure, if you want to, bring in the uniform. If not, if you just want to bring out the bat belt and you feel cool in like a regular t-shirt and a pair of jeans, go ahead and do that too. Right? No big deal. And for the military guys, I get it, man. Like, MPs have to wear the most ridiculous shit ever for their individual jobs, like freaking IOTVs with just a Kevlar and not the plates, and in some cases the plates too. Holy shit, that's gotta suck if you're just standing there at like the gate. Right? But if you have access to like a carrier, or if you have a carrier yourself, I wouldn't say not to bring that, mostly because there are only really 2 ways that you're going to be using a pistol in self-defense, either A, on the job, or B, in civilian clothes. So if you have a job that dictates that, bring that gear, right? And use that, and for those of you who have like, varied holsters and stuff like that, like there's a lot of dudes that are in security guard jobs, or there are a lot of police departments that mandate a very specific holster for like your bat belt and stuff, use that. Don't change anything. Use your gear. Because, again, you're either going to be using that pistol concealed or you're going to be using it on the job. And if you're using it on the job, you better get used to like that level 3 Safari Land with a freaking button and a bail, right? So get used to that kind of stuff. And make sure that you're able to use it properly, right? So that's really my stance on that. With rifle, it's slightly more complex, right? And here's why it's slightly more complex. First and foremost, if it's self-defense, a lot of people who don't have that job that, you know, asks you to carry around a gun or whatever, like in the civilian world, okay, we see a lot of them show up in chest rigs or battle belts and all that stuff. I'm not really opposed to that because we have a magazine count for that as well. But guys that show up in like just regular jeans, right? They have one in the gun and a couple of magazines between pockets, right? You know, that's cool. It's totally cool because, you know, if you have that much clothing on, right? And you're doing the self-defense thing, and if you throw a magazine in that pocket, that's all you got, right? And it's not going to be as smooth, and it's not going to be as cool looking as dudes with like their D3 chest rigs on or their battle belts or whatever. I have a teaching rig. That's a freaking 511. That's a 511 quote battle belt with the 511 belt that has a Cobra clip on it and stuff, and that's what I use to teach. Right. But a lot of times when I go to a lot of different classes, I split the days between, you know, plate carrier, you know, combat pants with pads with the knee pads in the pant knees, right, like inside of it rather than being external, and I got plate carrier on and all that stuff, and then the next day I show up in like regular jeans, and in places that I've been a bunch of times where I know it's kind of cool, I just tighten up the strings on a freaking on a pair of pajama pants, okay, and I'll be wearing like tennis shoes, and yeah, it looks super funky, but really think about, as a civilian, when are you actually going to use that rifle? Like, if you have that much clothing on, and if you stuck a magazine in your pocket, that's what you have to deal with, right? So, you know, be realistic with yourself. Be realistic with yourself as far as coming at the class. I'm not going to sit there and judge you because you're doing pocket reloads with your AR or AK or whatever, right? Because you're being realistic with yourself. You know, guys that carry, you know, their super collapsed bag rifle and all that stuff and have a couple of magazines in that, come out with that, dude. Come out with that, because you will only ever really be doing like reloads from that bag. You know, like unzipping it, getting it undone, shouldering it, starting to shoot it, and then you have to, for whatever reason, you have to change out a magazine, so you got to go dig it in that bag and stick it in there and all that stuff. Bring the stuff that you can realistically see yourself using, mostly because it's like, I hate being unrealistic with students, okay? Like, I hate the concept of doing like a squad-sized movement with a class, because the vast majority of the people that I'm going to teach, I know for a fact are not going to be doing that. Granted, if you are in that military job, if you are National Guard or active duty infantry, or if you're in like a combat job like the engineers or a scout or whatever, right? I would say dedicate one of those days to wearing your combat pants with pads in the knees and the plate carrier and doing those reloads, you know, in that fashion with the armor and stuff, because it feels very different, right? So think about what you're doing as far as like, how am I most likely to get into a fight, depending on my particular station in life, right? That's number one. Okay. Now, the next thing is, I get questions about knee and elbow pads, right? Because, dude, you know, like me, a lot of guys show up to these classes and they have body part issues, and our job is to, like, help develop you. I'm not there to break your body, right? So if there's things we got to work around, we can do that for sure, right? What I'll say is this: if your knees are trash like mine, right? If you're gonna get knee pads, what I would suggest would require you to invest a little bit of money, because the only knee pads that I've ever seen not turn into cool little ankle warmers are knee pads that are built into the pants themselves, right? So that means, you know, going to Cry or going to 511 or any number of different companies that sell pants that you can insert knee pads into. Because external ones, as well as elbow pads, not as much elbow pads, but definitely knee pads. Like the second you start paddle boating around, or even in some cases, even if you start changing positions a little bit, they slip right off. I'm built like a beanpole, man, so the second I stand up and start walking around, I feel it creeping on my leg. And even the bigger dudes, like, not just like the shit brick house guys, but guys that are a little bit heavier set or whatever, right? They just start to shift and then they fall right off the knee and then they're just on the ankles until the end of that drill. If you're going to use knee pads because your body's a little trashed, I would recommend just investing the money. Just bite the bullet. It is worth it because the knee pads definitely help you out if your knees are jacked up. So just go ahead and do that. As far as elbow pads and stuff, just tighten them up and acknowledge that they're going to feel weird if you want to wear elbow pads. I typically don't, right? But if you want to wear elbow pads, typically they stay on if you tighten them up because for some reason they hang on better to these limbs rather than the lower ones. So get what you want to get as far as that's concerned. And then if you just don't want to do that, that's perfectly fine too. A lot of people have taken our classes and stuff like that before, and they're just kind of like, okay, cool, whatever. So, really, that's it. Bring what you would use for self-defense and stuff like that, and pick a scenario, right? Like, you're in your house and you're waking up. For dudes that don't have rifle slings, that's okay. That's okay. You're gonna have a harder time. Honestly, you're gonna have a harder time just toting the thing around and not being able to just sling it up. But if you have a home defense rifle and you don't want to put that sling on because you want to keep it as home defense-y as possible, leave it off. Leave it off. It's fine. It's perfectly fine to do that. So I do highly recommend it just because you can just sling the thing up and it's okay. But guys that want to keep, their home defense rifles, exactly how it's configured for home defense, I totally get it, right? I've worked with guns that have and don't have a sling on for a long time, so it doesn't really bother me to have a sling on a gun and then to work with it without a sling. It's really on you to make that determination. But whichever one you want to do, okay, whichever one you want to do, it's not a big deal. And, that kind of takes a lot of the nebulousness out of it. And as far as, like, aid kits and stuff, right? Let's talk about aid kits a little bit. As far as my classes are concerned, I have a trauma kit that's ready to go, like a condensed walk kit for all of this. What I would say, bare minimum, have a tourniquet on your body, right? There are, like, our 2 classes require a tourniquet, so bring those. But if you want to, incorporate your own little medical stuff, the 2 other big things to have with that, as far as our classes are concerned, is quick clot of some kind, and like an Israeli bandage, some kind of gauze. Israeli bandages are really, really good, but if all you have is like regular gauze and medical tape, great, right? I'm not going to go into the chest decompression needles and chest seals and stuff like that, because if you come to our classes, we already have the training to use those properly. Okay, we know between which ribs that we're supposed to go into as far as the chest decompression needle, all of that stuff. If you're not properly trained on it, I'm actually personally of the mind to where I wouldn't personally mess with it until you specifically go out to go get that training, right? Because if you have a chest decompression needle in your hand and you have no idea what you're doing, you can do way more harm than good if you're using it improperly, I promise, right? So we have the medical training to use that, and that's why we have a bajillion of those things. But don't worry about all that if you're coming to take class with like us or anybody else, because those people, if they're worth their salt, will have that walk kit or medical kit or whatever, right? And of course, absolutely, utilize the 4 firearm safety rules properly, and you won't have to worry about that stuff ever, but it's better to have it and not need it, that whole mantra, right? So there is that. Now, those of you who have come out to classes and have used tourniquets, like training tourniquets before, and those of you that are like freaks of nature that come out and take training all the time, it's a really good idea to have like that Cat T tourniquet that is specifically used for training, because after a while it starts losing its own structural integrity. You start losing its Velcro stickiness, right? So what I would say is that if you're interested in doing stuff like this, particularly with us, so like if you're going to take a 2 class with us, like pistol 2, rifle 2, whatever, I would highly suggest to have a tourniquet that you are willing to use for training, and then hit it with like Krylon orange, right? And the reason for Krylon orange really is so you know for a fact that that is the training tourniquet right there. It doesn't find its way back into, you know, your I would use this for real gear. You know what I mean? And you know, a lot of people laugh at that notion, but you'd be surprised, man. It's like when we teach people about doing slide lock reloads, and we just tell them to ditch their empty magazines because somehow that empty magazine will find its way back into the gun. You know, and the couple of guys that retain those things before the drill is over, eventually an empty magazine gets into their gun. You know what I'm saying? So, if it's me and I'm using a training tourniquet, spray it Krylon orange. So, okay, this is the training Cat T or TK4 or whatever, right? And that's what I'm using for this. So, really, I mean, that's all I can really say. This is like the other half of like that training tips video. And realistically speaking, I mean, there's contact information on my website. If you have any questions about, you know, your particular situation, and if you need suggestions on what you think you should bring to a class, you know, contact us, okay? It's really not that big of a deal. There's more than one method to contact us, so, you know, if you're going to a class or if you're going to one of mine and you have questions on that, go ahead and contact us, and you'll figure that one out real fast. If you have any questions that, you know, that you think can be handled in the comment section below, there's a lot of people that train in my comment section, so if I don't get to it, they will, right? And I would suggest, you know, or you know, give me a thought process on what you personally do if you come out and take training classes, or what you think your methodology would be. If you have a mindset on what it is that you want to do as far as bringing stuff out to a class, but you want to put it out on like an open forum for other people to be like, you know, just be like, hey, critique this, throw that in the comments box below. I love those because they usually spark up pretty cool discussions. So there you go. I mean, that's really that whole thing in a nutshell, and I could go quite a bit further on this because there's a billion what ifs for this whole thing, but I think that's the best way that I could cover it in like a layman's terms. You know, like just real quick, down and dirty, here's what I think about it. So, you know, that's really the end of that. If you want to come take training with us and be taught how to do that concealed carry pistol stuff in a fighting sense, or if you want to learn how to use your rifle well, as far as a martial context, we have classes for that. You know, come out and talk to us about it. If you want to put your own skills to the test, like if you want to come out to one of these classes to touch on the basics and get pushed real hard as far as your fundamentals are concerned, we have classes for that too, man. So come out and train with us, man. I'll leave a link in the description below for what we have coming up. The Florida class in November still has slots, right? And we have a couple of sets of rifle classes that are set to go in December and January. And I have 2 slots open for the December class, the December 1 and 2 class at Bud's Range in Lexington, Kentucky. So, you know, come out and do that stuff. If not, if you just want to support the channel, support the soldier program that we have, where we go out and bring soldiers to these classes and train them up for nothing, you can support us through Patreon. There's also a method for you to spend $35 a month and come and take as many classes from us as you want. I know this crap is expensive, and I want to help, you know, the freaks of nature that'll come out and train all the time as much as possible. So, you know, come out and do that with us, and if you want, and a link for that Patreon page is in the description below. Also, as well as a link for the discussion page on Facebook. You can, go to the link that's provided there and have good times and discussions all throughout that. So that's all I got, guys. And remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.